thank you for listening to Trekker Talk, a fan podcast devoted to the adventures of 23rd century bounty hunter Mercy St. Clair from the pages of the Trekker comics by writer and artist Ron Randall. I'm Ruth.
And I'm Darren, and this is a fan podcast. We're not affiliated with Ron Randall, and the opinions expressed are just ours. We do this podcast because we always enjoy reading and talking about Trekker and any of Ron Randall's other comics.
Please consider visiting trekkercomic.com. That's Ron Randall's official site dedicated to Mercy St. Clair.
It features a brand new page of Trekker material every Monday. The current story being serialized is Hand of Kindness, featuring Mercy, Molly, and Sheriff Pell.
While you're there checking out the latest page, you'll find links to all the ways to follow Ron Randall on social media, including Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook.
TrekkerComic.com also has a link to his Patreon page, where it's easy to donate and help support the brand new Trekker material if you'd like.
For a small monthly donation, you get an early look at each week's page, and you get a terrific behind-the-scenes look at the development of the page.
On this episode, we're celebrating the release of Chapeltown, following the successful Kickstarter.
Not only was the book funded, but all the Trekker supporters out there helped Ron hit multiple stretch goals, which means a bigger and better book, and we'll be talking about all of the great material included in the book in this episode.
The books have all been shipped to the Kickstarter backers, but don't worry if you haven't received yours, because there won't be any spoilers in this episode. We're going to be talking about the book in general, but we'll save our reviews and commentaries for a future episode so that everyone has a chance to read and enjoy the book.
And don't worry if you missed out on the Kickstarter, because Ron Randall now has an Etsy shop. We'll include a link on our show notes, and you can also find a link to the store at trekkercomic.com.
At Ron's Etsy shop, you'll find books, prints, and original art. So hop over and check it out and pick up a beautiful copy of Chapeltown if you missed out on the Kickstarter.
We always enjoy hearing from other Trekker fans, and we know the show is more fun for everyone when we include your comments. So please take a moment to write in and let us know your thoughts. You could share your Trekker origin story or let us know what you think about Chapeltown. Anything you want to share will be appreciated. Just listen for our email address and other ways to contact us at the end of the episode.
Trekker Talk is part of the Rad Adventures Network.
If you enjoy the show, please consider checking out our other podcasts that are available on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Google Podcast, and YouTube.
Xenozoic Xenophiles covers the post-apocalyptic adventure series Xenozoic Tales, featuring Cadillacs and dinosaurs by writer and artist Mark Schultz.
And Warlord Worlds is devoted to the comic creations of writer and artist Mike Grell, including The Warlord, John Sable, Green Arrow, and more.
Ron Randall, Mark Schultz, and Mike Grell are our favorite comic creators. Their stories are always filled with adventure and interesting characters, and their art is excellent.
We hope you'll try out our other shows, and you'll find links to those podcasts in our show notes.
In the annals of television history, there are TV shows and characters that changed our culture and helped define generations. These
are not those shows. It's time to close up the bar, leave the war, and quit your yuppie whining so you can step on board the Enterprise D, run alongside the Hoff, stop time with your fingers, and introduce your family to the Voice Input Child Identikit, because this summer, Pop Culture Affidavit is taking you to the depths of 80s and 90s television with
It Came From Syndication!
For 7 weeks, I'll be taking a look at a variety of syndicated TV genres, from the lauded science fiction of Star Trek: The Next Generation to the "this was a show?" of Small Wonder. Along the way, we'll battle with the Thundercats, run through the Funhouse, give thumbs up at the movies, and have a very current affair. Pop Culture Affidavit presents
It Came From Syndication!
Coming July 11th to popcultureaffidavit.com and twotruefreaks.com.
The Kickstarter for Chapeltown had a goal of $15,000. And 628 devoted Trekker fans more than doubled that goal to $30,164. And that means together we all achieved 3 stretch goals, making the book bigger and better with more pages of story and more special features. Congratulations to all those Trekker supporters for that great achievement.
And we want to applaud Ron Randall's excellent organizational skills. Not only did he keep supporters informed throughout the campaign, but even with the addition of more story pages, he still met his delivery goal, with the books shipping out in August 2018. Cheers, Ron.
So let's talk a little about what's included in the Chapeltown book.
The first thing you'll notice is the stunning front cover by Ron Randall, with colors by Jeremy Colwell.
Mercy is perched on a rock in the center of the cover, and behind her is Sheriff Pell, who is introduced in this book. In the background is a crashed ship, and the skyline features a beautiful image of a ringed planet.
You'll also notice the cover has a special varnish on it that makes the image of Mercy St. Clair standing on the rock look three-dimensional, as though she's leaping out of the cover.
This effect is one of the stretch goals that was met.
Inside, you'll see the index as well as the credits for the book, including Ron Randall for story, art, colors, and letters, Jeremy Colwell for the cover colors, Caitlin Like for color assists, and Shauna Gore as editor.
While the main story in the book is Chapeltown, the first story you'll find in the book is the Volstock Payoff. It's a gritty noir story set in the dark streets of Mercy's home city of New Guelph.
The addition of this bonus story is again thanks to hitting another stretch goal during the Kickstarter campaign.
This 24-page story was originally scheduled to be included in the pages of Dark Horse Presents, but when that title ended, it left the story orphaned and unpublished. However, Dark Horse has been supporters of Ron Randall and Trekker from the beginning, and they let Ron include the story in this book as one of the stretch goals. Thanks, Dark Horse.
Next up is the main story of Chapeltown, a retro sci-fi western with Mercy and Molly on an adventure together that also features the introduction of a new character named Sheriff Pell. He bears a little resemblance to Walt Longmire, as played by Robert Taylor in the Longmire TV series. Ron's a big fan of the show, as are we. Chapeltown is a 50-page story filled with action and some big character revelations that some longtime readers might have seen coming, while others might be completely surprised. Either way, it's all fun and entertaining.
Immediately following Chapeltown, we get the new 22-page story, Hand of Kindness. It's the story currently being serialized at TrekkerComic.com, but you can read the entire adventure in the new book, which is fantastic for fans.
Next in the book is the 8-page short story, Tricks of the Trade. This special story was a backer level in the Kickstarter campaign that let supporters be a Trekker.
So in this story, several Trekker fans and Kickstarter supporters get to go on an adventure with Mercy St. Clair.
Ken, Linda, and Scott for Tamar are featured as bounty hunters, and there's also a Trekker couple in the story who look a little familiar to us. That's right, Ruth and Darren become Wrath and Darius in this adventure.
This was something we really wanted to do, and we sold some of our Star Wars trade paperbacks on eBay to raise the money for it, and we're very happy that we did.
A couple of years ago, we got a commission from Ron Randall of the two of us as Trekkers on a mission with Mercy St. Clair, and we were thrilled to see that in Tricks of the Trade, he put our characters in the same outfits he used in that commission. That was excellent. Thank you, Ron.
The next section of the book is a 12-page collection of Ron's design sketches for constructing Chapeltown. It features character designs, page layouts, and script samples. It's a terrific section, and it gives readers a little peek at what it's like to be one of Ron's Patreon supporters, where we get an in-depth look at each new page every week.
The last section in the book is an art gallery that looks very familiar to us.
As I'm sure most of you know, we always try to get a commission from Ron whenever we're lucky to see him at a convention, and we've slowly built up a nice collection over the last few years, and Ron graciously features them in this book.
The Sutherland collection features 12 commissions that Ron has done for us over time. Each commission is featured on a separate page, and all of the characters are from Trekker because we love the world Ron has created in this series.
There are a couple of different sketches of Mercy St. Clair, as well as Molly, Uncle Alex, Paul Clemens, Jason Bolt, Lasmusi, Jekka, Wisu, and of course, Scuff.
Chapeltown is a beautiful book, and we want to congratulate Ron on it, and we hope all of the Trekker fans out there love it.
We'll be covering the individual stories in future episodes, but we definitely recommend picking up a copy if you missed out on the Kickstarter. Just check out Ron's Etsy store, where the book is currently only $14.99 for 144 action-packed pages.
But you're probably wondering what's next, because this isn't the end of Trekker, and you're right.
A new Kickstarter will be coming soon, featuring Mercy's and Molly's adventures aboard the Dark Star Zephyr. We'll definitely let you know as soon as we hear more about the timing.
Until then, remember Ron Randall's new slogan, more Trekker, more often. And now it's time for Trekker Transmissions, when we share the listener feedback we've received since last time.
Your feedback adds so much to the show, so a big thank you to everyone who took the time to write in or get in touch through social media.
Randy Andrews of the Soundtrack Alley and Gen 13 Files wrote in after our interview with Ron Randall in episode 30. He said Ron's thoughts on Chapeltown were really great. I always enjoy the back and forth between you and Ron. Keep it up, and I can't wait to read the new book.
Kirk Spencer of Big Five Army was the first to kick off Ron's Kickstarter, as he had the honor of being backer number 1. Way to go, Kirk.
Swagcat Aaron let us know how excited he was to take part in his very first Kickstarter. He monitored the progress closely and was amazed to see the tally quickly grow. Aaron even shared with us that he used the Community tab to see just where the many backers live all around the world, and was happy to see supporters not only from the U.S., but also from Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and throughout Europe.
We want to share a special Kickstarter thank you to a group of Chapeltown bookmark and flyer supporters. These are fans who distributed promotional materials at their local comic book shops and libraries to spread the Trekker news.
Big thanks to
Carrie Crenson,
Chris Carnes,
Jerry Green,
Ed and Terry Moore,
Joe Crawford,
Clinton Robson,
Mark Sweeney,
Alan Middleton,
Gotham Sharon,
Sean Ross,
Kirk Spencer,
John Holloway,
Jerry McMullen,
and Cullen Stapleton.
We also want to mention that Ron Randall shared something very special online, which was a homemade Lego figure of Mercy St. Clair. He said it was made by a wonderful young Trekker fan, and it's terrific.
He thought it was a great way to celebrate the Chapeltown Kickstarter, and he's been using it online as an avatar some as well. We'll share a link to the photo in our show notes and on our social media pages.
We were fortunate to take a trip to the UK earlier this year, and that gave us the opportunity to meet up with our friend and Trekker fan Tony Greenall in Nottingham. He's a great supporter of Ron Randall.
Tony suggested we meet up at Ye Old Trip to Jerusalem, which is the oldest pub in England. It opened in 1189, the year that Richard the Lionhearted became king. The building rests against the base of a huge rock outcrop with 130 feet high cliffs where Nottingham Castle was built. The pub is attached to several caves carved into the rocks.
It's a great place, and Tony gave us a tour of the pub, and we enjoyed good food and drinks outside on a pleasantly warm evening. It was wonderful to meet Tony in person.
Tony is a great guy and told us many fun stories, and he dropped us a note after saying, "The sun shone on an evening I'll hold dear in my memory. Hopefully we'll get to do it again someday soon." We hope so too, Tony.
Our good friend Austin Appleby has dived into the world of Trekker this year. He wasn't familiar with the comic until he started listening to Trekker Talk. He wrote to us several times as he made his way through the episodes, and it was great fun for us to revisit those earlier episodes through his messages. Here are some highlights.
I love the format on how you both go over each issue. I feel like I'm just hanging out with you both talking about comics. What fun.
When he hit episode 8, he wrote, "Baltimore Comic-Con, an awesome interview with Ron Randall. Wonderful questions, and it was a blessing that Ron took time on such a busy day."
Later he wrote, "Listening to the adventures of Mercy St. Clair has been one roller coaster of a ride. I greatly enjoyed the 4-part story, Sins of the Father. I'm really looking forward to seeing where her adventures lead."
Later, when he heard episodes 21 and 22, he wrote about the train to Avalon Bay, saying, "This has to be my new favorite issue. What a story. Very hard-edged."
And once he caught up to episode 30, Austin wrote, "I loved hearing Ron talk about the Kickstarter for Trekker Chapeltown. I can't wait to dive into that one. Looking back, I really have you both to thank for getting involved in the world of New Galuf. It may not be the nicest place on the planet, but I'd love to visit."
Then Austin did a terrific promo for Trekker on social media, writing, "Hello, friends, family, and crime fighters. If you like well-written sci-fi adventures and an unstoppable bounty hunter, then this is for you. The creator of this wonderful and complex world is Ron Randall, and he's the talented artist and writer of Trekker. This is an excellent series. Being in the 23rd century is a blast, sometimes literally."
And then Austin shared links for TrekkerComic.com and Ron's Patreon page.
It was great to share Austin's comments here, and we want to mention that he is the guest host of Episode 4 of our Convention Correspondence podcast, where he covers a special secret cinema event in London focused on the world and film Blade Runner. I think Trekker fans would definitely enjoy it. If you're interested in trying it out, you can find Convention Correspondence at radadventuresnetwork.com and on our podcast and YouTube feeds, and we'll include a link in our show notes.
We want to give a shout out to Trekker fan and comic creator Katie Artistry for her comic titled After the Shifting. It is a beautifully drawn science fiction saga about brave women and men trying to survive in a harsh environment. The comic is full of adventure and imagination. You can follow the series on her Patreon page, and we'll include a link in our show notes. Katie is based in Germany, but spent some time in Portland where she worked with Ron Randall and other members of Helioscope Studio.
We want to close with a big thank you to our friend Reggie Hancock of the Cosmic Treadmill podcast and contributor for Weird Science DC. He submitted a review on Apple Podcasts saying, "If you love comics and haven't read Trekker, then you need to listen to this show. It's chock full of information and interviews that will get you psyched for the series. And if you already read Trekker, then chances are you listen to this podcast, so good on you."
Thanks so much, Reggie.
And thank you to everyone for taking the time to write in. We want to extend our Trekker thanks to everyone who has supported us on social media since the last episode. These are people who have liked or shared posts on Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr, and we sincerely appreciate all your support.
Before we start, let me say if we miss a name, please let us know and we'll correct it next time. And also forgive us if we mispronounce your name. Just email us and let us know. We'd be happy to correct that next time as well.
The 20th Century Geek Podcast with Scott Weatherly, Aaron Henley, who kept us and other fans up to date on Kickstarter news, Ange of the Supergirl Comic Box Commentary blog, Ashford of the Ride On Network featuring Feathers and Foes and Straight Out of Gallifrey, Austin Appleby, Brian Mulvey, Chris Carnes of Bat Books for Beginners and Batgirl to Oracle, Chris Mounts, Chris Sheehan of the Cosmic Treadmill podcast and the blog Chris's on Infinite Earths, Clinton Robinson of the Coffee and Comics blog and podcast, Comics in the Golden Age with Mike and Chris, Creator Talks with Christopher Calloway, Cullen Stapleton from the Worst Comics Podcast Ever, Derek William Crabb of the Fanholes podcast and History of Comics on Film, Dr. G, Man of Nerdology of the Pulp to Pixel podcast network, Ed and Terry Moore of Till Productions, Eric Mannix of the Independent Focus podcast, Gene Hendricks from the Hammer Strikes and Anime Freaks at the Two True Freaks network, Jerry Green of Bat Books for Beginners and the Professor Frenzy Show, Green Lantern HG, Helioscope Studio, Jared Albrecht, the yard sale artist from the Longbox Crusade and on Her Majesty's Secret podcast, Jay Jones of the Silver and Gold podcast, Jeff Messer of the Mike Grell page and the Geek Brain podcast and blog, Jeff Parker himself of Helioscope Studio, artist Jeremy Colwell, Jerry McMullen also of the Worst Comics Podcast Ever and Essential Showcase, Joe Crawford of the blog For the Non-Discerning Reader, John Baker who does sci-fi TV reviews at 3If by Space, John Holloway from the Worst Comic Podcast Ever, Justice's First Dawn with Mike Peacock,
Karen Williams of the Sweet Between the Pages blog, Katie Artistry of After the Shifting, artist Ken Solo, Kirk Spencer, Kyle Benning of King Size Comics Giant Size Fun, Laurel Phillips, also known as Mountain Flower, Longbox Crusade podcast with Pat, Jared, Jason, and Delvin, Mark Adams of Mark's Mess podcast, Mark Sweeney of the ITG blog and podcast and Comics Couplets, Martin Gray of the blog Too Dangerous for a Girl, Michael Allen Carlisle of the blog Crapbox of Son of Cthulhu, Mike Garvey of Waiting for Doom and the DC OCD podcast, Nicholas Prom of Comic Reflections, artist Pablo Ventura, Pat Sampson of the Longbox Crusade and Saturday Matinee Theater, Paul Hicks of Waiting for Doom and the DC OCD podcast, Peter DeVilbus, Professor Allen of the Relatively Geeky Podcast Network, Randy Andrews of Soundtrack Alley and the Gen 13 Files, Reggie Hancock of the Cosmic Treadmill podcast, Rolled Spine podcast, Ron and Lynn Randall, Ruth Rice, Scott Eos Weldon of Weldon Studios, Sean Ross of Pulp to Pixel and the Nerdy Dads podcast, Swag Cat Aaron, and Wendy Freeman of the podcast Double Page Spread.
Thank you all, and we'll be right back after we play a promo for something else that you may enjoy.
Alexander Hamilton, Aaron Burr. If you're a history lover or a musical lover, you probably know about both Hamilton and Burr's rise to power in the early stages of American history, and their infamous duel. But what if you didn't know the full story? What if one of them was a werewolf? White Rocket Entertainment proudly presents a 48-page full-color comic book, Hamilton vs. Burr, A Werewolf Tale. Written by Jared Albrecht, the yard sale artist, art by Nate Niles, colors by Ace Wheely and Ken Solomon, letters by Percival Constantine, and edited by Johanna Albrecht. Hamilton vs. Burr, A Werewolf Tale. Available digitally on Kindle and Comics Central, COMIX Central. Prefer a print copy? Hamilton vs. Burr, A Werewolf Tale, along with my other published works, are available at theyardsaleartist.bigcartel.com. That's theyardsaleartist.bigcartel.com. Or you can buy it directly from me, creator Jared Albrecht, the yard sale artist, at any of my Comic-Con appearances. Hamilton vs. Burr, A Werewolf Tale. Get your copy today. You won't regret it. Don't take my word for it. Here's what Ming Chen from AMC's TV series Comic Book Men had to say about it.
I really enjoyed it. A lot of great werewolf scenes in here. A lot of great... this is how I wish history would be told to kids. Books like Hamilton versus Burr, A Werewolf Tale.
That's Hamilton versus Burr, A Werewolf Tale.
Before we go, we want to provide our contact information. Please let us know your thoughts through email, Facebook, or Twitter.
If you want to contact us directly or have something you would like to have read on the show, then please send an email to trekkertalk@gmail.com.
You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr using the name Trekker Talk, and you can visit our website for links to all of our social media pages.
And that web address is...
trekkertalk.com. Pow!
Thank you, Charlotte and Catherine of the excellent Mark's Mess podcast for that clip.
You can listen to our show through Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts, and all of our episodes are always available at trekkertalk.com and at radadventuresnetwork.com.
You can also find the show on YouTube as part of the Rad Adventures Network. That's RAD, R-A-D, which is short for Ruth Ann Darren.
And you can always visit radadventuresnetwork.com, where you'll find all of the episodes of all of our podcasts, including Trekker Talk, Warlord Worlds, and Xenozoic Xenophiles, as well as Sensational Sleuths, where we talk about favorite mysteries, Fantastic Fantasies, where we discuss favorite fantasy adventures, and Super Secret Spies, where we talk about our favorite espionage series.
If you like the show, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts. Every review helps the podcast be more likely to show up in search results. And on YouTube, we hope you'll subscribe to the channel and give us some likes on the videos.
Remember, at trekkercomic.com, you'll find a new page of material every Monday, as well as links to all of the ways you can follow Ron Randall.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you'll come back next time for another new episode of Trekker Talk.
Trekker Talk is a proud member of the Comics Podcast Network. For more information, visit comicspodcast.com. We are not affiliated with Dark Horse Comics or Ron Randall. The views expressed on the show are solely ours. Music is taken from the album Royalty-Free Music, Movies, and Videos from the Royalty-Free Music Club. We make no money from this podcast and no copyright infringement is intended.